want to go over 15 OCD behaviors to give you an idea of what a person like myself with OCD deals with every day. Before I go over some OCD behaviors though, I want to remind you that these behaviors need to take up at least 1 hour a day for you to be seen as OCD. And there are more OCD behaviors that I won't go over in this video. And the same goes for those behaviors. They need to take up at least 1 hour a day for you to be seen as OCD. So what are OCD behaviors? Let's jump into them. Many gifted people suffer from some form of OCD, most notably perfectionism. When it comes to OCD perfectionism, you can have an excessive concern about evenness or exactness, or an excessive concern with a need to know or remember. For example, I remember that I kept mixing up the words wistful and woeful in my teens, so I told myself I had to know what they meant. And once I knew, I obsessively kept repeating their meanings in my mind so I wouldn't forget. And no, I didn't do it because it was fun. So what happens is, once I had repeated their meanings, their intrusive thoughts kept returning. And the intrusive thoughts tell you that you are gonna forget their meanings, you're gonna mix up the words. So what do? When you have OCD, you keep on repeating the meanings of the words in this situation to, ease your nerves. But it only works for a little while, and then the intrusive thoughts return and the whole process starts all over again. When you suffer from OCD perfectionism, you can also have a fear of losing or forgetting important information when throwing something out. I'm like that too. Whenever I throw things away, I'm afraid I've thrown away something important. I also have an excessive concern with performing tasks perfectly or correctly, and the worst symptom for me is my fear of making mistakes. My fear of failure. I can't stand making mistakes. If you leave out the perfectionism, someone with OCD can have an obsessive fear of being burgled. That person may feel they need to check if all the windows and doors are locked before they can leave their house, and they don't check this one time and leave. No, after they've checked if all the windows and doors are locked, the intrusive thought that there might be a window or door which is still open because they didn't check everything comes back. And then the compulsion to check everything again returns. 3. Women can sometimes have OCD during pregnancy or after their baby is born. Obsessions may include worrying about harming the baby or not sterilizing feeding bottles properly. Compulsions could be things like repeatedly checking if the baby is breathing. If we zoom in on obsessions, some common obsessions which affect people with OCD include 4. A fear of deliberately harming yourself or others. For example, a fear that you may attack someone else, such as your children. 5. A fear of harming yourself or others by mistake. For example, a fear you may set the house on fire by leaving the stove on. In my late teens, I felt this fear every time I drove a car, and I hated it. I couldn't bear the feeling that I might become responsible for harming someone else because of a mistake I made while driving. At a certain point, the fear got so bad, I stopped driving. 6. A fear of contamination by disease, infection, or an unpleasant substance. I have this one too. I work with preschoolers every week and hate it every time I have to give them a hand, because when I do, I keep repeating, I have to wash my hands once the lesson is over. I have to wash my hands once the lesson is over. I have to wash my hands once the lesson is over. And it goes on like that. 7. A need for symmetry or orderliness. For example, you may feel the need to ensure all the labels on the cans in your kitchen cabinets face the same way. I feel this need too, although I've learned to just shut the cabinet door and walk away. It's hard though. If we zoom in on some common compulsions, common types of compulsive behavior in people with OCD include 8. Cleaning and hand washing. After I've taught a class at the elementary school where I work, I wash my hands at least twice. 9. Repeating certain words. Before I leave my classroom, I always say up, dicht, dicht, black. If I don't say it, I can't leave. Up stands for the fact that I pulled up the shades. Dicht means closed in Dutch, and I say to check if the windows are closed. And black stands for me having turned off the computer. I sometimes have to repeat the words more than 10 times before I leave. It's exhausting. 10. Counting. I use flashcards to teach English to my younger kids, and at the end of every day, I count the flashcards to see if I have them all. I'm afraid of losing them. On bad days, I keep on counting them to check if I truly have 10 or 15 flashcards. And once I've counted them all, the intrusive thoughts return and I must count them again. It's awful. 11. Ordering and arranging. I've said it in an earlier video that my clothes have to be arranged in a certain way. If they're not, I go crazy. 12. Hoarding. I don't hoard things, but I know a dear family member who does this. This person can't even throw away yesterday's newspaper. It's a serious problem. 13. Asking for reassurance. As I said in the first video in this mini-series on OCD, whenever I log out of my online bank account, I must ask my husband if I've truly logged out. I'm terrified of getting hacked. 14. Thinking neutralizing thoughts to counter the obsessive thoughts. I did just that when I felt that strong fear of flying in the spring of 2022, and I told you about this. When I thought the intrusive thoughts about plane crashes and other airplane-related disasters, I kept thinking neutralizing thoughts. I kept going over the statistics on the low odds of dying in a plane crash. For example, there's a bigger chance of falling out of bed and dying than dying on a commercial flight. The odds of being in a plane crash are 1 in 11 million. The odds of dying on a commercial flight due to some kind of disaster, like a plane crash or some other kind of accident, are 1 in 29.4 million. The odds of falling out of bed and dying, on the other hand, are only 1 in 2 million. So going over the numbers to, ease my mind, so going over the numbers helped me to neutralize my intrusive thoughts. It worked. It definitely worked. Knowing the facts felt reassuring. It eased my mind. But of course, sooner than expected, the intrusive thoughts returned. 15. Avoiding places and situations that could trigger obsessive thoughts. I know all about this one too. I have a projector in my classroom. I'm scared of losing its remote control. So when I have finally managed to put this remote control in the top drawer of my desk and close the drawer, I do not want to open that drawer because I know my compulsion to check if it's truly there will start all over again. Like I said at the beginning of this video, there are more OCD behaviors, but I decided to focus on these in this video. Do you have these OCD behaviors too? Or other OCD behaviors? If you do, or if you don't, tell me about it in the comment section below. Aside from sharing my personal experiences, this information came from these websites. You'll find these links below this video. If you found this video interesting, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel and watch this series from the start. In 2 weeks, I'll be back with a new video in this series on intellectual giftedness. Till then, I only want to say 3 things. Thank you for watching, take care, and bye for now.